You've got a ticking tax time bomb in any aspect of your life where you're on the government's radar. Wherever wealth resides, somebody's going to try and steal it, period. You can secede from that. Imagine for a second that you're looking at your registered retirement savings plan account value, and you wake up one morning and some government turd said, hey, why don't we implement an additional tax on registered retirement saving plan account values that are valued at more than $1 million? And we'll just have the account owner pay it now. And then some other
They'll pay it every single year that their account balance is over that amount.
government turd says, well, why would we stop there? Why don't we take a look at all Canadians' homes? And why don't we tax the equity in every Canadian home? Do you realize how much revenue that's going to bring into the government? Now, there's a gross misclassification of things. How on earth have we ever, as Canadians, agreed to that language being used as it relates to government? Revenue generating programs. Governments cannot create anything except onerous taxation. And so, my goodness, if we really truly understand what's going on out there, and we know that there's a solution to that problem, how soon would we want to implement that solution in our lives? The sooner, the better. Wherever wealth resides, somebody's going to try and steal it. There's another sharp example. And not only do they want to tax it, they want to tax it every damn year. Revenue to construct another money-wasting program where eventually they're going to do such a horrible job at managing that program, they're going to need to come back for more tax. How ludicrous is that? And this is a carryover from an episode we just recorded. I'm going to have to dive off the roof into a snowbank to cool myself down. That's how furious I am about this sheer idiocy of the studies and representations made in the construct of these revenue generating programs. Right. I have yet to have a report put on my desk that says we want to talk about spending reduction programs and how that's going to leave more money in the purses and wallets of hardworking Canadians who know how to spend it far better than any government bubblehead does.
But Jayson, if they spent that into the economy with local businesses on products, services, and goods, boy, how would that ever benefit the economy?
Rich, wouldn't you know it? It would spur the economy.
Yep.
But yet what we're doing is we're enabling, it's a very strong word and it's very accurate. We're enabling a government to literally strangle the backbone of our economy, small businesses. Small businesses employ more than 80% of Canadians who are working, who are gainfully employed. And we are strangling these hardworking business owners and their teams, the people who rely upon that business to provide an income for their family and to provide financial certainty and, heaven forbid, create abundance. It is just absurd, the programs that are being enabled. You've got a ticking tax time bomb in any aspect of your life where you're on the government's radar. Wherever wealth resides, somebody's going to try and steal it, period. You can secede from that. You implement the process of becoming your own banker. Your money must reside somewhere. Store that capital inside of, ideally, a mutual life insurance company who cannot inflate their money supply, where you are protected, you've got certainty, you've got no government bureaucrat that can reach inside of there and steal your wealth. You can do this. And if we allow this absurdity to continue, you've heard the expression of a death by 1,000 cuts. Well, they're up to about 600 now. How much farther do we want to allow this to go? Because we're enabling it.
Well, and there's something I want to touch on too, and I'm going to bring up a couple of we'll do a little screen share here, but I actually saw one of our colleagues, Rick Buter, who did a little video on this the other day, and so I thought it would be interesting to just share. Here is a look at the St. Louis. So you can go. Here's a link right here. It's looking at the M1 money supply, and you can see you can take this chart and you can look at the money supply all the way back from like 1960. Here's looking at it between 1960 and year 2000. Then we go to 2010. Then we keep going. We see the increase in that money supply. Starting right here from the recession of 2008, 2009, huge increase. Now we shoot forward and we take it all the way out to 2020, where the pandemic starts to rear its head around. Look at the rapid increase in money supply from the Federal Reserve. That's a dramatic spike, never before seen. Look at this entire history of time. And to go like, that's not even a hockey stick. It's a straight line up into the atmosphere. That's like the rocket, stand that Elon's building right now to send his Starship to Mars. The thing's ginormous.
Well, you can't raise it. You can't raise interest rates.
So you got to do something else. And
you print more money.
We're looking at the Federal Reserve here, but what do you think the Bank of Canada is doing? They're all in cahoots. It's all the same general premise. And so what has to happen here? This is all done as a measure to prop up the economy instead of letting things, fall to come back to some level of normal, which would also be unpleasant. But basically, it's the equivalent of a Band-Aid kind of situation, right? You've got, I used an analogy earlier, Jason. We were talking. It's like, okay, you shot yourself in the head, and you're bleeding, but you have enough of everything, kind of glanced, and you've got enough of capacity left over that you can grab a first aid kit and you were able to fumble around and stick a Band-Aid on there. Sorry, that's not going to be sufficient. Well, that's what the government's doing. They're sticking a Band-Aid on, and the Federal Reserve and Bank of Canada on, not allowing the economy to come back to a level of reality. Instead, they're going to pump fake money into the marketplace, and they're also going to manipulate interest rates. A combination of these two things is how they do it. And now we're seeing rapid inflation taking place right now in Canada. There's talk of rising interest rates to cool that down. But meanwhile, what did the drop in interest rates over the last decade, the last 15 years cause? Housing is unaffordable now for the average Canadian. And there's always $1 million homes just to buy a basic home in like Toronto, Vancouver. Well, how did the rise of price size get to that level? What about reducing the interest rates that allowed affordability to take place, spurring on a real estate boom? So what's the underlying cause here that's really creating the issue? It didn't happen over the last year. It started 15 years ago. And if we went back further, we went back to, the Paul Volcker Fed Chair Reserve situation. We could see a chain of events between all those things, all the way back to the 2008, financial meltdown that all started with bad mortgage loans and a hot real estate market. Like, it's all interconnected.
If you thought it was bad then, it's even worse now. Way worse now.
Just looking at that vertical line on the increase in the money supply.
Yep.
And that brings me to the next thing. And so something I wanted to share with our viewers and our listeners here. I'm going to share my screen again, and I'm going to show you a book, a site that I think people should be aware of if they're not already, and it's about how privatized banking really works. So we'll add this back in, and we're going to flip over to this. So this is Lara-Murphy, lara-murphy.com, and you can click on privatized banking. So here's Robert Murphy, Carlos Lara. They're some of the board of directors of the Nelson Nash Institute, but here they have a book on privatized banking, and they have a whole book series, and this particular book here, it indicates really what's going on with the banking industry and how does the manipulation of the money supply and fractional reserve lending actually work. And if we could get to a world of privatized banking where it is really at the you and me level, as Nelson Nash would say, what would the impact be if we removed the fractional reserve capacity that's available at the commercial banking level, and we could take our banking business, our deposits and our borrowing capacity, and move it at the you and me level through the interconnection of mutual whole life insurance with insurance companies who cannot inflate the money supply. They're not allowed to.
Stop enabling your government to tax you to death. And maybe you might have a little bit of extra money And you can choose to store that capital inside of an entity that has shielded the accumulation from taxation and has shielded the accumulation from some government bureaucrat from crafting up some stupid idea about how to generate revenue. Imagine sitting down in a government cabinet meeting and the audacity of somebody raising their hand going, I've got another revenue generating idea. Well, then get the hell out of this room and go start a business. Go start something from scratch and spend day after day, month after month, year after year, working your ass off to build something from nothing, rather than try to plunder hardworking, tax-paying Canadians. Stop enabling this, for heaven's sakes. And the more capital that you shield from onerous taxation, the greater the abundance, the greater the ability to give, the greater the ability to go and build something that gives people a chance at prosperity. All of you, I'm talking to all of you watching this live. You're spending half of your year working to pay tax. How much longer do you want that to continue? And how worse do you want it to get? All of these revenue generating programs that are being proposed are grossly misclassified. Let's put an end to it. Less government. I don't care what your political leaning is, liberal, conservative, Green Party, Purple Party. It doesn't matter to me. The problem is not malignant to one political party. That's not the problem. The problem is that we, as the citizenry, the Canadians, we enable it. We enable this to happen. Let's put an end to it. Less government, more money in your bank account, more money in your purse, more money in your wallet. You know how to spend it and how to allocate your financial resources far better than any government bureaucrat. And Rich and I will tell you, we've expressed this a million times, yet we're going to have some moron who's going to accuse us of, you don't believe in taxes and you don't believe in this and you don't believe in that. We believe in the necessity for taxes to take care of things that are important to the citizens of our country. Of course we do. But I think that we could all agree without much debate that it's become onerous. It's frankly become ridiculous, because these programs are all created under the guise of generating revenue to help someone else, when all they materialize into is a program that is grossly mismanaged. And then the very same bureaucrats come back and go, oh, geez, we really underestimated what we needed for these programs. We got to hire more bureaucrats. We got to grow government. In order to do that, we need more tax, because we really don't have the ability to generate revenue. But we can use this language to affect the way people think. And the fact of the matter is that most people would rather die than think. And so the real root to the problem, the root cause of the problem, you can stand in the House of Commons if you want to get a migraine headache in about 30 seconds flat and watch these people just lop insults at each other and ask questions that never get answered and so on, and allow that to frustrate you and allow them to continue to distract you from the real problem. And the real problem is at the you and me level, because we're enabling this nonsense to happen. We got to put a stop to it. Gosh, somebody throw a snowball at me. You'd see the steam rising. It's just.
Well, and we mentioned, in the video that we just kind of did that it's really ties back to something that Nelson said. And Nelson was all about seceding and peaceful secession.
Right.
He was absolutely clear that you're not going to solve problems with top-down thinking. You need a bottom-up solution.
Right.
And you don't have to ask permission if you start there. And so the perfect starting block of a solution is to implement the process of becoming your own banker, start voting with your dollar by moving your money into an environment where it is no longer impacted by taxation, if you understand how to manage that process well and you have a good coach, and start taking that control back. and moving your money away from a system of inflationary control, which is the commercial banking sector, where your deposits can be, manipulated to increase the money supply. And really, we're the cause of the inflation, because the inflation happens when we go and demand their money, the funny money. And so if we don't have the need to go to access a loan from, ABC Bank, and we can now get it from a mutual pool of ownership with an insurance company that doesn't inflate the money supply, we become part of the solution versus part of the problem. So really, for people that read Nelson's book, they don't necessarily know that, because there was no discussion of building the quote unquote 10% in Nelson's book. But understanding the book Privatized Banking, and really what the movement is happening around the infinite banking concept, it's a way where you can be profitable, in control of your financial life. You can secede from certain, overarching mechanisms in the marketplace that are imposed on us by government. You can secede from those one little piece at a time by moving your dollars away and into a private contract that you have autonomy, control over, and it has a whole host of other values. And if we can do that, more and more and more people, we are, that's how we impact change. Is, we get 10% of the population implementing this concept. There's a book by Malcolm Gladwell called The Tipping Point. Once you get 10% of a population base doing something, it becomes an unstoppable force. And that's really what we're looking to create on a big picture scale. That's what Nelson wanted to see. And that's, part of what Jayson and I and the team that we have at Ascendant Financial and our other practitioners are actively in the business to do. And we get to help a lot of people along the way. And we get to protect a ton of families with a bunch of tax-free death benefit, another thing that the government doesn't get their hands on. I mean, I literally could not think of a better thing to do with my life than what we're doing right now.
So well said, and very true. It really creates a sense of peaceful, stress-free way of life, as Nelson described it, and it is so true. The more you secede from that system, the more peaceful and stress-free your life becomes. And I just, I get really impassioned about hardworking Canadian families. I grew up in a home where there was no silver spoons anywhere. In the early 1980s, my parents argued about money all the time. Inflation skyrocketed. Interest rates peaked at 21.5%. And for many, for quite a long period of time, having food in the home and having heat and having running water and all those things that you need, there were many times where the power bill got so large that the hydro got turned off and it wasn't getting turned back on until you paid the bill. And my parents almost losing their home to foreclosure more than once. And it breaks my heart to see that we're working toward now. We're seeing this high inflationary period where we're starting to see, because now we have social media, right? People talked about it at the coffee shop, the diner, the tavern back in the 80s, but now it's all over social media. People are posting things like, I just got my power bill. It's $468. It was only $168 this month last year. And more than 200 of it is administrative fees. Think about how ludicrous that is and the impact that that's having on people. Not to mention, we're still in the midst of this, global pandemic, and people are mentally stressed and anxious and depressed. And now you add on all of this inflationary pressure. Some people are going to succumb to that pressure, unfortunately. And we've just got to quit enabling this nonsense that happens. Keep more money available to your family. Keep more money available to your business. You know how to allocate those financial resources better than anybody. And that will spur the economy, create more jobs, something that no government can ever do. It is small businesses that create the majority of the jobs in this country. It is those people and the people that they gainfully employ that we need to be advocating for. Not trying to point the finger at the wealthy or the villains and we need to tax them more. I got news for you. The wealthy pay the most tax in this country. And capital is mobile. Capital money is attracted to where it's best treated and best respected. And it's mobile. Every dollar that's floating around out there has its own set of luggage. Hey, where do you want me to go? Like, where am I going to be well treated and where am I going to be well taken care of and well respected?
And its flights aren't canceled by COVID.
No, yeah, there's no travel restrictions. And so
it's really interesting you mentioned that, Jay. I'm glad you brought that up, that capital is mobile. And here's why. I've had multiple conversations in the last 6 months with several clients and other, prospective, clients and things, people who are, and all over the country. They're in Ontario and Alberta and Saskatchewan and BC, and they're fed up with things. And they're now looking at buying properties in other areas so they can start their plan to leave Canada.
right.
And it's a lot of it has to do with taxation. I mean, that's the leading cause. And people are looking at places like Florida because there's some freedoms happening there, and people are looking at places like Texas and buying property down in Texas and in other locations. And so they're so dissatisfied with all the hard work that they're putting in and the restrictions that seem to be placed on them for their hard work and their efforts, and how difficult it's becoming just to operate a business, especially if you're in the restaurant space or a business that requires physical people coming to your location during the pandemic. Very difficult, a lot of shutdowns, it's very difficult to keep a business running, but yet you still have overhead costs, and and it's very restrictive. And so some businesses are flourishing that maybe don't have those things, and people have figured out ways to turn it around. But there's also a lot of other ones that are struggling, and so people are looking for ways to take their dollars and their life elsewhere, because they want to go where they feel that their dollars can be respected and they can put it to work in the way that they choose. So I'm having a lot of conversations like that over the last year. They seem to be increasing at the rate of the conversations I'm having, and that's a direct market signal that people are looking to take their dollars elsewhere.
I hear what you're saying there. It's yeah, it has come up. I mean, I'm to say I'm patriotic, I love I love my country. I love Canada. I just think that we're just headed down a path that, again, the real root problem is that we're enabling it. You can imagine how annoyed people feel when they don't feel heard. And politicians have very selective filters on what they actually hear. And that's scary. I run into the fight. Let's go. Let's do the right thing. Let's advocate for people and let's help them where we can, and continue to share Nelson's message and continue to empower people to take control. And that work's going to continue. We've more than doubled down on our efforts to create and build the 10%, create that tipping point. And it all starts with you. If we're the root cause of the problem, we as Canadians, we're enabling this nonsense to happen, then the solution starts with us as well. And a good place to begin is to develop your understanding of the process of becoming your own banker, or the infinite banking concept in your life. Set on a path to begin implementing it. Start creating your own peaceful, stress-free financial way of life.